would it be helpful, even as we're getting into this, to perhaps, and it may be more appropriate for us to do this down the line, but should we define for our listeners the two words or the two phrases we brought up, natural theology and common notions? I'm not sure. I think that a lot of the confusion about these issues arises from the fact that there are in fact various definitions of those terms, but I think that for our purposes, if we were able to define them up front, it might help our listeners.
Yeah, please be my guest. Go ahead. I think that's wise. We're going to get there eventually, but I think doing it now is probably better.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So I didn't want to jump the gun, but we could talk about it a little bit more as we get into it. But I think the idea, and I'm going to look to Jeff here to help flesh out sort of the details of these definitions. But in short, common notions would be sort of those things that both believer and unbeliever have and possess by virtue of the image of God. So, for instance, a sense of morality, a sense of the existence of God, that there's something greater than oneself, that there's something greater than the creation, etc. A very clear sense of right and wrong, the conscience, we might say, in short, that these are the kinds of things that constitute common notions. Jeff, does that sound right? Am I forgetting anything?
That's exactly right. In the first two chapters in the book, Light of Nature and Common Notions can be interchanged. Dr. Fesco points in particular to Anthony Burgess, one of the members of the Westminster Assembly, who also, at the time of the assembly, was teaching on natural law or common notions. And it's pretty clear that Anthony Burgess offers four other definitions of light of nature and common notions that he rejects. And basically, it comes down to light of nature equals the Mosaic, the Ten Commandments, the moral law equals common notions. So those are almost synonymous, not exactly synonymous. So they're overlapping meanings. So common notions refer to the knowledge that we possess of God by virtue of being created in His image, living in His world, surrounded by His natural and special revelation. Now, so that's common notions.
Now,
I could be wrong, but I don't know anybody in our circle that would disagree with that definition.
no, I think Dr. Fesco is quite clear, quite right, that it's a Reformed idea, or it's an idea that you find within Reformed theology. It's a Catholic idea. It extends beyond the Reformed. It's not unique to the Reformed, but it's definitely within the Reformed tradition. How would you then define natural theology, just before we get into it?
Well, there's natural, we want to distinguish between natural revelation, which is what God reveals of Himself through nature, including human nature. That's what God reveals. The natural theology is the human reflection upon the natural revelation. So the Reformed scholastics made a distinction between true theology and false theology. And they would put any natural theology done by unbelievers in the category of false theology.
That's huge.
And that, of course, is where we're going to get some disagreement. I think with Dr. Fesco, is I didn't see the clarity of that way of looking at things. And you can look at Richard Muller's post-Reformation Reformed dogmatics. You can look at John Owen. You can look at Franciscus Unius, Turretin, and if you know Latin, a whole host of other. Peter van Maastricht, also, whose work is coming out slowly but surely, will see that kind of distinction. So natural revelation is from God. It's clear, as Dr. Van Til would argue, in nature and scripture. It possesses the four perfections of special revelation.
Right, which are necessity, authority, sufficiency, and perspicuity. He says natural revelation is necessary, it is authoritative, it is sufficient, and it is perspicuous.
Right.
So he affirms those because God speaks and reveals Himself through nature and Scripture. So those attributes can be shared and described. You can describe natural revelation with those attributes because it is God revealing Himself.
Right. Now, natural theology does not necessarily partake of those four perfections where it departs from the truth of natural revelation. And of course, that's why the Protestants, the Reformed scholastics in particular, would have classified natural theology done by unbelievers as false theology.
It must necessarily be false theology because it comes forth from an unregenerated heart, correct?
Yes, that's correct. So it's
Right,
not the revelation that's the problem. It's
right.
the reception of that revelation where the things go awry.
So when theology is, we could call natural theology, then perhaps in the falsa sense, right? That attempt by man to articulate a view of God that is autonomous or that is rebellious against the very revelation that they're using to articulate their natural
Right.
theology, sort of a Romans 1 suppressing of the truth.
Right. Now, the common notion, of course, would be the truth that's suppressed. So
That's right.
we do recognize that there are common notions, or else we couldn't have notions that are common that are suppressed by the unbeliever. Right. So but
That's right.
these common notions, I think, are, well, we'll get into this further into
Sure.
the
Let's
discussion.
read.